Ken. Now this is going to be a little living history lesson, and there's going to be a little bit of participation from you. You can't just sit there on your back pockets and relax. There's going to be a little participation. So when I say my name is Ken, your response is going to be, "Hi, Ken."
Hi, Ken.
Okay, let's try it again. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you. My name is Ken.
Hi, Ken.
All right. Now at the end, you're going to participate. When I say the demonstration is over, you're going to uproariously applaud. All right? So, like I said, we're going to give you a little living history lesson here today. And to do that, we have to take you back in time a little bit. We're going to take you back to a different era in our history. And that started when you got here, as cold as it is, down at the museum down there, because down there it's 2019. But as you started up this path over here, or the path and back over here, you started going back in time a little bit. And by the time you got up here, it's not 2019 anymore, it's 1914. You're not in AJ anymore. You're in Bland, New Mexico, B-L-A-N-D, New Mexico. It's about an hour and a half north of Albuquerque, up by the current city of Los Alamos. And you're looking at about 7,500 feet up, elevation up there. And you're looking at the Cossack Stamp Mill. What we're going to do for you here today is we're going to give you an opportunity to see and hear and feel the same things those miners experienced 105 years ago now when they ran this mill in New Mexico. So what I'll do is I'll give you a brief history of the mill, and then I'll kind of walk you through a little verbal trail of what's going to happen, what some of this stuff is, and what's going to happen. So, the history of the Cossack Stamp Mill. Gold was discovered in the area up there of New Mexico where Bland would become a city in a few years. Around 1890, Bland actually became a city for the first time in 1890, because that's the first time it showed on the U.S. Census. Now, we don't know if that was officially a city. We think it was, because it was on the census. But the books tell us it was 1894. At any rate, Bland became a city up there. It grew to about 3,000 people at one point. The real boom time was around the turn of the century. That was the real mining time up there. By around 1905, 1906, the veins up there were pinching out, and gold mining and the other mining was kind of on the decline at that point. Now, Bland was built in a very narrow canyon up there. It was only 60 feet across at some points at the bottom. Very steep walls. Went up to about 8,000 feet elevation on top. And the city developed on the sides of that canyon. And that's where they built this mill in 1914. Now, this is a very late example of a stamp mill. This was just about the end of this technology. So that's one reason it looks like it does. It's beauty. And the other reason is it was enclosed in a tin building. That prevented some of the deterioration that you'd normally get from the weather here. So, now if you remember, I said mining was on the way down in 05 and 06. And they built this mill in 14. We're not really sure what possessed them to do that. They may have thought they had some newer technology that they used in conjunction with the stamp mill to actually make a profit up there. At any rate, they ran it between 1914 and 1916 for a period of about 18 months. They never did run at full capacity. They maybe got up to like 70%. And they couldn't make a profit up there. So they just closed it up, let it sit. In the 30s, a group came in and tried again to make it work, and they couldn't do it either. So they just boarded it up and abandoned it, just left it sit there. Sat up there for quite a long time. The land was changed hands up there and was sold off and parceled off and stuff. And in 1988, the couple, just a man and a wife that owned the piece of property where this mill was sitting, wanted to get rid of it. They wanted to get it moved out of their yard. It took up most of the yard, so they wanted to get it out of there. They weren't going to be gold mining, so they didn't need it. So they called the Superstition Mountain Historical Society, which at that time operated out of Goldfield down the road here. This museum was not here. And they talked to them for a while, and finally they said, hey, you guys can have it for free. We don't want anything for it. All you have to do is come and get it. It weighs 70 tons. So, this Historical Society got a group of guys together and somehow convinced those guys, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, let's go up and get it. So in the following year, in 1989, a group of guys, and their names are on this, etched in this stone over here, that group went up to the land, and over a period of 28 days, they disassembled this mill and loaded it on trucks and made 5 round trips, 1,000 miles per trip, and brought it back here and took it down to Goldfield and assembled it down there. The idea being it was just going to sit there as a static display. So those are the guys that did the back-breaking work. They disassembled this thing and assembled it twice. I'll tell you that in a second. So those are the guys you can really pat on the back. And those guys are also, this is a little known fact, but they're also quite famous in AJ for the business they gave the chiropractic industry. So they're, you might go in and see their names on it. You go to chiropractic, you see a little plaque with a name on it, could be one of these guys. So, sat down at Goldfield until 2004 when this museum came into being. And they had this property here and they wanted it up here, so these guys went down and got it. That's where they did the second disassembly, brought it up here and assembled it. The thought being that someday we would make part of it run. Our intention was only to make part of it. And this is the part that runs, this last bank of stamps. They call it a bank or a battery. There's individual stamp assemblies in there, 5 of them. This is the mortar box. Our intention was to make this run. The rest of these are just as a display because they came with the mill. We don't have the money or the wherewithal to make these run. So, it sat here, work was periodically done on it, and around 2011, 2012, some of the people here today came onto the volunteer crew, and our job was to make it run. It was kind of tough to do that because we have no money at the museum. Everything is catch as catch can here. So in 14, we did get this engine. We had enough money to get that engine, rebuilt it, worked with it a lot. We weren't sure it could do the job. A lot of us doubted it. But finally, in February of 15, we did run it for the first time for ourselves. And we found out, now everything we did on this mill was kind of like backyard mechanic stuff. It was our best guess at some things. And we found out in February 15 that our guesses were pretty lousy. We basically made a really dangerous machine more dangerous. So we went back to the thinking part of this thing. And around February or the end of 15 there, we did run it for the first time for an audience, and we had nailed it then. We tinkered it with it enough that we finally got it right. It ran great, and from then till now it runs, we push the button and it does exactly the same thing it did 105 years ago. That's kind of unusual in today's throwaway age. This thing still does the same thing 105 years later, and if we take care of it, it'll do it another 105 years. I have no doubt in my mind. All these parts these are all original parts. Wood's original, everything's original, and it's all in great shape. So that brings us up to today. So what does this thing do? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to crush ore so that we can get a look at what's inside that ore. We think there's precious minerals in there, but we have to crush it and refine it a little bit to find that out. So, over here we have a mortar box, this big cast piece of metalwork here, and inside of it are 5 stamp assemblies. Now these stamp assemblies are individual, but they operate together for one cause. If one of these were to break, we could simply take it out of service and the rest of them keep going. Doesn't bother. So, you have 5 stamp assemblies. Stamp assembly is this whole piece. Starts on the bottom here, runs all the way to the top. You can see the label up there, tappet. The tappet's job is that when the cams start turning, that cam is going to catch the bottom of that tappet and lift it up. It lifts up the whole stamp assembly. When it gets to the top, the cam continues around and allows that 1,000-pound stamp assembly to drop. And they'll come around and pick it up and drop it, and pick it up and drop it. The piece in the middle, the kind of center rod there, it's called a stem. That just is like the backbone of the stamp assembly. Down on the bottom, you have a very big, heavy piece here, a couple 100 pounds, called the boss. The boss just adds weight to that stamp assembly, and it holds on our shoe, which is the part that actually contacts the ore. This is about 85 pounds or so. The interesting thing is, the shoe has no mechanical connection to the boss. It's held onto the boss simply by compression. If you're daring and you put your finger in here, you'll see that there's a concave opening in there that will mirror the shape of this top of this stamp, a little bigger. So what we do is we place the shoe under there, we raise the rest of this up. We have these little wooden shims spread around the thing, and we raise that stamp assembly up and allow it to free fall down onto here. That almost 1,000 pounds coming down compresses these wooden shims, and that compression by itself holds that shoe on there when we run this mill. Now we also get them wet. You'll see water running in a little bit here. They get wet and they swell up. That holds it on even better. So that's a stamp assembly. So, one part you can't see here, there's a part buried under this ore that's called the die. It acts as kind of the backbone of the crushing action. You have the die underneath, you have your ore on top, and then you have your stamp assembly coming down and hitting the ore, and you're crushing it between those 2 heavy metal objects. It's about 11 inches around, about 5 inches thick. Big chunk of steel back there. So, what's going to happen, I should tell you, before you got here, we raised each one of those stamp assemblies up, okay? We have chain hoist up there. We raised it up, and the millman would they'd raise that up like that, and he'd take this is called a jack stand. There's one up there for each one of these things. He would take that jack stand, and after they raised it, they'd put it out like this, and they'd allow that 1,000 pounds to come down and rest on here. That's how we start the mill, in that position. When the millman started, I'll explain in a second how they get it going. So, ore comes in to this mill, something like the chunks that are setting up on that stand there. That's too big to run through the mill. We have to crush it down to a size about like this, about 1.5 inches. Now we do that with this crusher over here. When they did it in New Mexico, they used a much larger crusher that's up in this stairwell here. It's probably 5 or 6 times the size of this little guy. But for us, this does the job. When they had it in New Mexico, they used to drive their ore up on a hill, drop it straight down into that crusher. Gravity fed all the way. So, what we're going to do is our ore is going to come in. The guys are going to get up there and they're going to crush some ore and let it drop through the deck there. And it'll fall into a skip car. Skip car is this metal car that's out in front here. That's an original one, all rusted out. We made a replica of that, a little smaller, and it's under that deck. So you're going to see the ore go through there. Then they're going to winch that car up on top, and it's going to automatically dump up there into a hopper feeder, which is a triangular sheet metal piece in the middle here. Ore is going to sit in there until it's called for by the mill. And when we run the mill, you're going to see the cams turning, and then you're going to be able to see this little arm on that third one in the middle there. You're going to see that bouncing a little bit. When it's doing that, it's feeding ore into this mortar box to be crushed, pulverized. So, we'll be starting with the crushing. They'll bring it up. Once they get it up on top and it dumps, we're going to start this engine. The millmen are going to bring it into gear right here. And at that time, you're going to see things start spinning, and the guys up on top are going to crank a big wheel there. And that's going to pull this very heavy idler assembly piece over here. It's about 2,000 pounds. Going to pull that in and make contact with this belt. This is the drive belt here. Going to make contact here. When the pressure is right, it's going to pick up that big wooden bull wheel. It's going to grab that, start turning it. Then you're going to see the cams turning. Then the millman will be signaled up on top when we're ready to bring the mill into action. They're going to do that by taking, remember, its jack stands out like this now, and you got 1,000 pounds resting on each one of those. The millmen are going to time that cam coming around. They're going to take this, called a key, or a cam stick. They're going to watch that cam come around. They're going to put this in there. And the cam is going to hit it here. It's going to bump the tappet here. It's going to lift that weight just for a split second. And the millman's going to take that jack stand out and allow that 1,000 pounds to come crashing down. And it'll be picked up and down and up and down until we stop it by doing the reverse. We're going to put this in there, bump that weight, and get that jack stand out there and allow that to sit there. So, where was I? So that's what's going to happen. You'll be able to watch, you'll be able to see in between here these guys doing that work. You'll be able to see them using this key to run this mill. This is our key, like your car key. So with that, I don't know if you know it or not, but I'll explain just a couple things. The museum is run and maintained virtually 100% by volunteers. There's over 200 people that volunteer here year-round at various times to run this place. It could not be here without those volunteers. Financially, it could not survive. And it is a not-for-profit organization, so there's not a lot of money here. And we have no money to maintain this, a little money to maintain it, but nothing to go forward. We have projects in our heads that we would like to do for the museum here. We have a lot of talent in that regard, but we have no money. So we have started a little donation fund over here in this plastic jar. It's quite large, and it's fairly empty. Now, if you want to participate and do something about that, we'd appreciate it very much. We really would. We do things, like I said, it's on a scale you can't believe. So we would like to do that. Now, when we're done, you'll be able to come up, when the guys are done, you'll be able to come up and ask them any questions you have or anything, visit, hang out a bit. You'll still have time to get down to the lecture, no problem. And with that, you guys know just about everything I know about it. I'm a millman, I can run it, but to be honest with you, I would be up there, except I'm supposed to be down here doing this because I'm the best looking guy on the crew. I can't help that. It's just life, all right? So when we're done, remember, you're supposed to applaud. And I'm sure you would anyway, because it's a pretty decent little demonstration. Also, this mill is the most actively demonstrated stamp mill in the western half of the country. Last year, we ran this mill over 50 times for demonstrations. There are other stamp mills that are restored that you can go see, but you're going to have to be pretty precise on your schedule because most of them run once every few months. So we put a lot of work in this, and it is a showpiece. It really is in this technology. And like I said, with support, it'll be here for your grandchildren's kids to come out and see it. So hang on a sec. We're going to start. Boys are going to crush some ore. that ore in that mortar box so it crushes better. It also keeps our shoes wet. Remember these shims. The last thing it does is when that ore is pulverized to a fine enough point, and that's going to look something like this, that water pushes it out and through here and into this collection trough. Now this is where we would get our gold. We would refine that further. Now in New Mexico they used a cyanide process. What they would do is take that slurry and pump it into a tank like the one we built behind you there. They would put that slurry in there with the cyanide and water solution. They'd agitate that around for a number of hours, and that action would dissolve that gold. Gold would be trapped in that cyanide solution. They'd take that off, and they would put it in another tank and add zinc powder, shavings, whatever it might be. They'd add zinc to it, and zinc and cyanide are very reactive chemically. That chemical reaction allows that gold to basically reformulate almost into a solid, and they would take that off and they would retrieve the gold from the zinc at that point. And then up there, of course, they would smelter it. They'd melt it, burn off the impurities, and they'd have your little gold bar. Here, we would get our gold from here, if there was any gold to be gotten, which there isn't. No one gives you gold-bearing ore. And we have very little ore to last us through the season. That's why we keep it kind of short on the crushing the ore, because we just don't have a lot. What they would have done in New Mexico, only they'd do it for 24 hours, 7 days a week. Now, that concludes our demonstration. We really appreciate you coming out. Hope you'll come back, tell your friends. Remember, this jar is sitting here looking at you.